Welcome to our virtual community conversation about ending homelessness in Sonoma Valley. Before we get started, our interpreter, Julie Burns, has a message for everyone.
Muy buenas tardes y bienvenidos a la reunión. Next slide, please. Para esta reunión será interpretada al español. Para escuchar en español, por favor haga clic en el botón de interpretación, que es la imagen del globo que se encuentra en la parte inferior de su pantalla. De ahí escoja su idioma español. Y para escuchar solo el idioma interpretado, haga clic en donde dice silenciar audio original o en inglés mute original audio.
It's my pleasure to welcome Supervisor Susan Gorin to speak with us about why we're here tonight. Supervisor Gorin.
Thank you, BJ. And I really want to thank you, our community members, for participating and viewing tonight's town hall meeting. I also need to thank BJ Bischoff and all of our panelists and the great members of my D1 team for organizing the virtual town hall forum on homelessness, ending homelessness. If you're like me, you spent the weekend looking at and hearing the pounding rain happening in our community and wondering how our most vulnerable community were faring during this horrendous rain that we were experiencing. I imagine folks huddling under bridges, feeling wet and soggy in their tents, trying to seek shelter in our emergency shelters, parking in their cars, and finding very little comfort and solace during this horrendous winter storm event. It gave me great pause and galvanized my efforts and all of our efforts to once again seek out solutions for homelessness. I've worked on resolving homeless issues for over 10 years as a city council member, mayor of Santa Rosa, and now supervisor, working with some of the great service providers on our panel discussion tonight and the incredible efforts at the county with Tina Rivera, our interim director of health services, Dave Kiff, interim director of Community Development Commission, seeking out solutions so that we can finally provide a comprehensive solution for our homeless residents, community members, trying to understand who they are, where they're camping, how we can best meet their needs. We are in a good position this year because our governor and legislature has recognized that homelessness is endemic, and we have to join together with all of you to put resources into finding appropriate housing to house our homeless and homeless insecure population. Just yesterday at the Board of Supervisors meeting, we had our initial discussion regarding Project Home Key funding from the state level, and rejoicing that a number of our cities are coming forward in sponsoring projects for funding that will provide permanent supportive housing and shelter for our homeless population. I hope that we're able to scramble to support their efforts, find the funding to purchase the homes or hotels, motels, erect some housing out of small pallet shelter homes, and provide the wraparound services that will really provide the road to success for so many in our community to successfully reintegrate into the community. So tonight we'll explore who are our homeless, where are they living, what kind of conditions are they living in, why are we finding fires up in the Montini Preserve in the river area from those folks just trying to keep warm and to have a warm meal. But the outreach efforts that we are taking in and trying to figure out the best way to meet their needs, the services that SOS is providing are hopeful options with Homeless Action Sonoma and other organizations, FISH and SOS providing desperately needed meals and nutrition. And of course, the great folks who are working on the cleanup of our creeks and the homeless encampments, because indeed it is an entire village working together to create solutions to end homelessness. Thank you, y gracias, for participating in tonight's virtual town hall. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to BJ Bischoff. And thank you, BJ, for your services tonight.
Well, thank you, Supervisor Gorin, and it's been great to work with your district staff on this. And this is such an important issue. We're breaking the evening up into 3 different sections. The first one is about providing you an overview of people who are unhoused in Sonoma Valley, kind of give you an idea about what that population is, a little bit about the demographics. Next, we're going to share with you the services that the unhoused Sonoma Valley residents are currently receiving and what they need that's not being provided. And then finally, we're going to be looking at the future of homelessness in Sonoma Valley. And the way that this will work is we've brought in some people who work and volunteer already to end homelessness. They're going to share what's happening, successes, what they still need to do their work. And then we're going to have opportunities. There'll be 3 opportunities throughout the evening where we'll open it up to you for your questions and comments. And we're probably not going to have time to answer a lot of in-depth questions tonight, but we will be able to answer some of those questions. But more than anything, we want to have your comments. We want your opinions. We want to know what you're feeling about the situation. And so with that, we'll go ahead and get started. So let's go ahead and let you know who our speakers are tonight. You can see them all on your screen for those of you who are watching on Zoom. We have the mayor of Sonoma, Mayor Agramonte. We've got our police chief, Orlando Rodriguez, Lieutenant Rodriguez. We have our superintendent, who is Dr. Palazuelos. We also have Cheryl Johnson, who's the CEO of our health center here in Sonoma Valley. And we have Sandy Potter from FISH and Richard Dale from the Ecology Center. We have Annie Falandez, who is with Homeless Action Sonoma, Dave Kiff with Sonoma County Community Development Commission, and Tina Rivera, who is with the Department of Health Services. So all of these people have come together to really share what's happening and ideas for the future. Let me also tell you about the support team that is behind
You
the
skipped
scenes.
me, BJ.
Oh, I'm sorry, and Kathy King. Sorry, Kathy. I apologize for that. Kathy King, who is our executive director of Sonoma Overnight Support. Did I miss anybody else on there? Okay, their names are all on the screen. Thank you for that, Kathy. And you'll be hearing from Kathy several times tonight. Let me tell you who is going to be working with you behind the scenes tonight. And thank you for moving that slide, Hannah. Hannah's our technical director. She's going to be forwarding the slides from one to another. I'm BJ Bischoff, and my co-facilitator, Sarah Sturch, is on here tonight. And we're independent facilitators, and we're going to be facilitating this community conversation, making sure we stay on track and move forward. Ariel Kubu-Jones is the District 1 director, and she's going to be monitoring any email that comes in tonight. I'll give you that email address in just a little bit. Some of you who are on the phone may not be able to access this through Zoom, so we're giving you an email opportunity as well. Karina Garcia is our District 1 field representative. She's going to be making announcements in Spanish periodically, and she's our timekeeper. She's going to be keeping us on track. Hannah Whitman, our District 1 aide, is our technical director. She's going to manage Zoom and the PowerPoint. And Julie Burns and Ashley Nunez will provide our Spanish interpretation. Let me tell you a little bit about what's going on with the procedures tonight. The first thing you'll notice on the left here is our email address. If you have any comments, questions, please send them into the email address. We've gotten some comments already, some questions actually, and some of the more detailed questions that we've gotten have come in through the email. We really want to see those questions and comments. Pay attention to the chat, because Sarah will be posting things in the chat as speakers speak. she'll be putting in links to various websites or programs that people mention. Our email address is D1, as in District 1, d1townhall@sonoma-county.org. So we'll repeat that several times tonight. So the process is we want you to place all your comments in the Q&A. We're saving the chat to provide the information for you that's needed. And you'll see Sarah will put that in from time to time, or our presenters may do that as well. They can activate, they can go to that as well. We have deactivated the upvote function. So when you're typing in the Q&A, for those of you who've done that before, you know, the thumbs up function, we've deactivated that so it's easier for us to monitor the comments that come in. If you have comments, just say them right after what someone else has said before you, and we'll get that. All of this is part of the public record, so we'll see all of your comments. Again, go ahead and use the email whenever you want. At the end, we'll have 3 public comment sessions. At the end, we're going to give you an opportunity to actually speak, to be verbal, and we're going to ask you to keep your comments to about 30 seconds. Don't bother saying your name. It's not like an official Board of Supervisors meeting where you have to say your name and where you're from. We just want to hear your questions, your comments, more than anything comments. We're not going to have a lot of time for questions, but we want to know how you feel. That's the important thing. We want your opinions. We want your ideas. And then also we want to remind you that tonight's session is being recorded, and we really want you to use respectful language. It's really important for us to ask you to avoid any personal attacks. And if people say things that are really cruel to others or inappropriate, we have the ability to dismiss those functions. They'll still be there in the Q&A. They'll still be part of the public record. We just won't bring attention to them because there are children in our backgrounds, and we don't want others to possibly hear or see some things that may be inappropriate for children to see or hear. So let's get started. So the first section is an overview, as I said before, an overview of our population here in Sonoma Valley that is unhoused. We're going to talk about how many unhoused residents we have, where do they live, a little bit about what we know about our unhoused neighbors, and I want to thank SOS for that image. Thank you so much for that. And let's get started with Dave Kiff. Dave is from the CDC, and he's going to talk about information that the county has on our demographics. Dave.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for joining us here. My name is, as BJ noted, is Dave Kiff. I'm the interim executive director of the Community Development Commission. We're a county agency. I did spend a very fun 6 months as the interim city manager in Sonoma, so happy to be back with friends here. So what I pulled from is from our coordinated entry system. And coordinated entry is the system that a lot of the homeless individuals or underhoused individuals are within, but some are not. So it does paint kind of a limited picture of who our Sonoma Valley and Sonoma homeless are. And basically, within the coordinated entry system, we have 1 homeless family. We have 24 individuals. Of the 24, 2 are youth. So, and the average length of time that those folks will have reported spending in homelessness is 3.5 years. So that's quite a bit. 92% of the clients are coming within the Sonoma Valley, the main Sonoma Valley zip code, are entering it from a homeless situation. In other words, they're coming to this coordinated entry system from being on the street or being in a shelter. The only 8 are coming from a housed situation, meaning they're vulnerable to losing that housing. Sorry, 8%. So 92 completely on the street or in shelter, 8% coming from housed. The demographic makeup, and this is a demographic under HUD. So a person who might be Latino may report under the category of white. So 80% category is white, 12% is American Indian, Alaskan Native, or Indigenous, and 8% are Black, African American, or African. The clients spend an average of almost a year, 365 days, in the coordinated entry system. However, once they're in the system, so none have exited back out to homelessness situations. That's another thing that we watch. So coordinated entry, again, helps you get housing. We also, I'll close here, we look at a vulnerability index score for these individuals. Generally, it's a score between 1 and 13, sorry, 1 and 14. And if you break it down in the middle, right at about 7, about 11 of those individuals that I mentioned are 7 or less. And what that means is they don't have a lot of the chronic problems that persons with a higher score would have. So 11 or 7 or less, but 13 or 8 and above. And indeed 2 are score at 13 or 14 on the vulnerability assessment index, which means there's a lot of significant problems that obligate us to provide housing for them. I'll stop there and move to the next item.
Thank you, Dave. We really appreciate it. Now we have an opportunity to hear some on the ground information from Kathy King with SOS. And Kathy, as you know, she and her group provide a lot of meals and other services for people experiencing homelessness and those who are precariously housed. Kathy, go ahead and tell us a little bit about the information that you've been receiving from the people that you've been serving.
Okay, BJ. So good evening, everyone. My name is Kathy King. I've been the Executive Director of Sonoma Overnight Support for the past 6 years. I want to thank Supervisor Goran and everyone who's participating tonight, and her staff and BJ for pulling this town hall together. I'm going to share with you some data that we've collected January 1st of this year through mid-October. The information that's been collected, can I have the first slide? That's been collected is collected by our bilingual intake specialist, Natalia, and we collect that 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. at the Springs Hall. We have 600, have served 678 individuals. 25% of them say that they're homeless, and the 37% that you can see, either they're too embarrassed to say that they're homeless, or we didn't collect the data because they were in for maybe a COVID shot or some other services. Next slide, please. The homeless, the ages of the homeless, you can see the highest number is young, that 26 to 35. But the sad part is that you have the over 66 and at least 6 individuals that are 75 to 100. Next slide, please. So this is the ethnic background of the homeless. You see that 28% are Spanish speaking, and the rest is broken down, but the majority are Caucasian, 67%. Next slide. This is men versus women. It's predominantly men. Next slide. And this is people that we ask, do they have a job? And they say no. And then there's a small percentage that have part-time jobs, but it's multiple jobs. Next slide. And this is the key part, 93%, and I think it matches with what David's saying, is that they are from Sonoma and they have family here and they've been born here and they've been raised here. Next slide. And then we asked if you're interested in going into a shelter. It's been our experience when we do process someone, once they find out what the rules and regulations are, they decline to go in, or they go in and they exit almost immediately. Next slide. And that's the data, and that is collected every day within a software that we believe the numbers are accurate. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Kathy. And so the difference between what Dave shared with you and what Kathy shared with you is that the information that Dave shares are people that are formally declaring their needs through the county system of coordinated entry. And a lot of the information also from the point in time survey is taken on one day. What Kathy is doing is getting information on a daily basis. And from what I understand, Kathy, you're saying we've got 169 people since the beginning of the year who have shared with you that they're experiencing homelessness.
That's correct. And 37% that declined to answer.
Got it. So there could be more.
It could be more, yes.
Right, could be more. Okay. Let's hear from Cheryl Johnson from the Sonoma Valley Community Health Center about what your experience is with the health of our unhoused residents. Cheryl?
Hi, good evening. This is Cheryl, and thank you so much for having us today. I would say that a lot of the work that we do is actually with Sonoma Overnight Support, and we're really proud of that work. What we're seeing in general is goes back to both what Kathy said and what Dave has said, which is that there are basically different categories of unhoused people here in the Valley. And there is some reluctance in general to have people self-identify as being homeless. But what we're looking at and what we ask specifically about is whether or not people are living in a homeless shelter, whether they're living in transitional housing, whether they're doubling up, whether they're living on the street, or whether they're living in some other situation. And when we asked those questions in 2020, we had 151 people who identified with one of those categories. And this year, through September 30th, it's down to about 102. And generally, what we're seeing is that, for the most part, that there are some substance or mental health issues per se. But again, there's really no way to really say this is the characteristics of someone who is unhoused, because everybody's unhoused situation is a little bit different. But again, the ones that we are seeing tend to have issues with behavioral health, they tend to have issues with substance use, and in some instances, they tend to have chronic diseases that go unmanaged because they don't have some of the systems that we commonly need to have, such as a refrigerator for insulin. So one of the things that we've been working with Kathy with is to try and get them up to Los Gillicos and to the trailers, especially if they need those types of services. And so far, we've been pretty successful, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do that level of work. But I think the thing that Dave said that is really a true statement is the fact that these numbers don't represent the number of people who are living in multi-generational homes. We've had instances where we have 30 people living in a 2-bedroom apartment, and we know this because we've been there and we had to visit their homes. So in the course of this conversation, there is a whole group of people who we probably won't be talking about because they haven't self-identified.
Thank you for that startling information that you've just shared with us, Cheryl. We really appreciate that. We want to move now to the topic of encampments, and Supervisor Gorin mentioned that in her introductory comments. And we're going to talk with our police chief, Chief Rodriguez, and our executive director of the Sonoma Ecology Center, Richard Dale. And I welcome you two. Thank you so much for participating. Chief, let's start with you. We've heard a lot in the news in August and September about the encampments on Montini Preserve. So go ahead and tell us about that. Tell us what happened, what additional encampments that you know about, what's happening there. Kind of fill us in if you could. Oh, you're muted, Chief. Richard, Dale, are you there?
I can take a run at this.
Thank you. Sorry.
So what we've been seeing up on the Montini Preserve is probably a dozen or more camps in the last year or so. And we tend to sort of look the other way. There really isn't, and Orlando, Chief Rodriguez can say more about this. When we see them, there's not really a way to work with people unless you're working through the whole system. And the challenge that's happened on the Montini Preserve is that it was, of course, a really dry year up until last week. And frightfully so, there were a number of fires, as many as 10 on the preserve started from camps. And we realized at some point when there were a couple of larger fires that the people living there were actually themselves in danger, as well as the community around us. And so a group got together led by the police chief and sergeant, those of us who are helping take care of those preserves, and also with Kathy King, who obviously has a really great handle on some of the people who are there and how to work best to resolve the issue. And it was decided for their own safety that it would be best to close the preserve to camping. And so signs were posted and people were talked to, and everyone decided to leave. So it was the way it was handled, I think, was pretty good. Obviously, this is a challenging situation because when there is no place to go, you want to be able to support that situation. But also there can be a real severe risk when there's a safety issue like fire.
Thank you.
Sorry about that. I just had some technical issues here. But yeah, Richard covered it. And I definitely want to thank, of course, Richard and Kathy King for their support and supporting the community and helping us relocate people, because some of them didn't want help. But and then, of course, Kathy can explain it even more. There was nowhere to place them. That was the biggest issue we ran into. But because of the safety and the community safety, because of the fires, that was the #1 reason why we were moved encampments. So thank you, Richard, for explaining that very well. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Great. Are there other encampments, Chief, that are happening now that we need to know about?
Well, they have moved from Montini Preserve, and from what I hear, they're going to Larson Park and be by the creek. And I think that this last weekend during the river event that we had, that's what the storm was called. Kathy King again comes to the rescue, and she was able to provide, I believe, 4 rooms or 5 rooms for people that needed a place to stay, because it was, as we all saw, places were being flooded. So the rainfall just came down and they came out and they really needed our assistance. And she provided those rooms for them. She provided us information in case deputies did find somebody that was in need of shelter to call Kathy, and she would provide a shelter. So again, she's always there at the right time, and she provides the shelter. I just hope we can get her a place where we can make it more permanent.
Thank you, Chief. We appreciate that. And we all appreciate Kathy's hard work and her team as well. Richard, tell me what the condition of these camps are when you go there, and a little bit about what you're doing to help, and how can community members help in the work that you're doing? Because I know you're doing a lot of work with those camps.
Well, when a camp has been emptied, when someone is not living there anymore, obviously they're made of found and donated materials, or I should say mostly they are. And they're also places to live. And so you'll find everything there from bedding to clothes to cooking supplies and so on. And once there's bad weather, like last weekend, there's a lot of things that are just kind of in a sorry state. And then, of course, without sanitation facilities and without trash receptacles and so on. Often camps are kept relatively neat around the areas that are actually being used, but right beside them, there's going to be a lot of material. So when we go in and clean them after there's a place that's been vacated, there's a lot to move out. Sometimes it's hundreds, sometimes thousands of pounds of things that have to be moved. It's been interesting in some of the more recent cases. The folks who've been living there actually helped clean them up and put everything into bags and got everything ready for us to remove, which was really great.
Yeah.
But it's a real challenge because there's a lot of things to move, and people who help, it's sometimes messy, but it's not horrible. It's just it's something that we need to do to be able to help move and clean up the spaces.
And volunteers help you with this, Richard?
Definitely. So you can get in touch with us through, I believe there was already a contact put in the chat, and we're happy to have your help, especially on the Montini and Overlook preserves. The volunteers there are fantastic, but we can always use more help. And
That's
then
great.
similarly along the creeks, there's always a need.
Thank you. Well, thank you so much for sharing the details of that with us, both to you, Richard, and the Chief. Thank you so much. And now it's time for us to hear from you, and we want to hear from the community. And this time we're going to ask for comments in the Q&A. So we're going to ask you to get your typing fingers ready and give us your thoughts about Sonoma Valley's population of individuals and families experiencing homelessness. What are your thoughts about what you've heard, about what you've seen, about what you've experienced? Type your comments in the Q&A, or email us at d1townhall@sonoma-county.org. Don't worry about spelling. Don't worry about complete information. That's okay. And Sarah, you're on. What are you seeing coming in the Q&A?
Well, it looks like so far, since we just launched this question, we have only one comment so far regarding the specific request about what folks' thoughts are about Sonoma Valley's homelessness in our community and what folks are experiencing. And Gina Kuklis commented regarding Richard's comments about the Montini Trail. And she says that it was the Montini Trail volunteers who initially sounded the alarm about the fires and encampment issue. It was also volunteers who did the cleanup. And just like Richard said, more volunteers are needed. So you can see that link in our chat. We also have a comment, actually it's a recommendation from Bob Edwards, that might it be legally possible to develop a program and formula whereby the county could forgive all or some of the county's property tax for property owners who offer to house and or shelter the homeless. Examples include a spare room, a garage, barn, vacant commercial properties, etc. And that would include screening and supervision from the county and other agencies like SOS and county mental health, etc. Thank you, Bob, for your idea.
Sarah,
And-
I'm going to just interrupt you just a second.
Yeah.
And I'm going to ask Karina. Karina, would you make a comment just to invite our Spanish-speaking participants to get involved?
Of course, claro. Buenas tardes a las personas que están escuchando en español y desean escuchar esta reunión en español. Pueden hacer clic en el icono de interpretación en la parte baja a la derecha de su pantalla. Ahí pueden elegir español. También pueden escribir sus preguntas, sus comentarios, sus preocupaciones en la sección de Q y A o pregunta y respuesta. Las pueden escribir en español y se estarán traduciendo al inglés. Muchísimas gracias.
Thank you so much, Karina. I want to make sure we can get everybody involved. Let's go ahead and back to Sarah. What other comments are you seeing, or did you see any emails that came in ahead of time?
Give me 1 second here. I'm replying to a question in the Q&A. Providing a link there. And
Okay.
Let's see, Gina also mentions that there have been encampments in the back of Maxwell Park by the creek. Thank you, Gina, for letting us know about that. In regards to Bob Edwards' comment suggesting a property tax forgiveness or deduction for property owners to offer shelter, Paul Gee suggests that Permit Sonoma stop red tagging these alternative housing options like tiny homes and RVs and yurts, causing the eviction of people who are already housed. Thank you very much for that idea and feedback. We do have some emails here. Looks like we have one from Annie Ward. Now, Annie's asking a number of questions here, and I'm going to leave it to BJ to see if we can answer any of them tonight. But she asks about how many homeless individuals live in the entirety of Sonoma Valley, how they are being served now, which we'll actually be discussing here very shortly, correct?
Right. And we did answer that. We answered that. We think, to the best of all our knowledge, at least 169 individuals that Kathy has counted. And then we've got another question that's come in on the Q&A about what's being done to help the homeless get permanent housing. And we'll be addressing that a little bit later tonight as well. So thanks for that.
Yeah, it looks like we have a comment here from Daniel Kahn about SOS, which again, we will be talking about very shortly here, that they provided 10 people local motel rooms for 2 nights during last weekend's storm. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing that work.
Diana Sanson asks a question about Los Gillicos. Seems to be working. Can this be expanded to make room for more people who want to be housed? I'm going to quickly, Tina, are you ready? Or Tina or Dave? I know that I think the answer is no for that one, but Tina, do you want to respond to that? We've already asked that question.
Unfortunately, no, it cannot be expanded yet. It's at capacity with respect to the infrastructure at 60.
But if there were other properties available, I
Correct.
suppose it could be replicated.
Absolutely, can be replicated throughout the county.
So thank you for that question, Diana. Good to hear from you.
We have Fred Alabach says that in Sonoma, views of homelessness are very polarized, and some are compassionate and others want homeless as far away as possible. Thank you, Fred. Looks like we have some additional comments. Keep them coming in, folks. We
Great.
see every one of them, even if we don't get to read every one of them. We'll be reviewing them all. Regina Brennan says that someone mentioned that there's a resistance to the unsheltered going into shelters. Is it possible that there are excessive barriers, i.e. rules, restrictions? And if so, how can existing barriers be redesigned? Thank
Mari
you.
has asked a question, and I think that Annie's going to be able to answer that later this evening. Do we have a system for keeping unhoused individuals linked with people in our community who can serve somewhat like a conservator? I imagine these people would be something like mentors. So Annie, if I'm not mistaken, you're going to be mentioning a little bit about that a little bit later. It has a lot to do with your model. Anything else?
You know, I have a few emails I received earlier, that Supervisor Gorin's staff collected here. Let's see here. We have one from Susanna Bond, who says she's interested in knowing the status of the property on Highway 12, just north of Agua Caliente Road, where the old sheriff's substation used to be located before it moved to Grove Street. She says years ago, she remembered hearing reasons why this property was not being used by the county, but doesn't recall what the issues were. And does the county still own it? Does it need expensive rehabilitation? It looks like she's maybe suggesting some potential use of it regarding ending homelessness in Sonoma Valley.
That's a great question. And if some of these questions will be able to be posted through Supervisor Gorin's social media site. So pay attention to that. Supervisor Gorin will be looking at some of these detailed questions a little bit later. Before we move on to the next section, Supervisor Gorin, I'm going to ask you if you have any comments or anything you'd like to make at this time before we go on to section 2.
I'm unmuting. Thank you so much, BJ. A couple of comments that I'm anxious to hear about the steps forward. First of all, LG Village. We have to remember that the glass fire came down fast and furiously at that site, damaged and destroyed 6 of the pallet shelter homes, and the evacuation efforts that night were we're grateful that no one experienced injury, but I will note that site is challenged by the fires and other public safety and emergency crises going on. So I raised the question yesterday, what is the future of LG Village? Should we relocate some of the pallet shelter homes, perhaps in Sonoma Valley, perhaps in some of the other proposed locations that are now being discussed at the county? So we will be looking at that as a possibility. And I really need to thank Dave Kiff and Tina Rivera for prioritizing Sonoma Valley residents for shelter at LG Village. We have about 16 residents of Sonoma Valley occupying those pallet shelter homes. So it's one of the reasons that we'll be discussing later on. And the former Sonoma substation was declared surplus by the county and sold to a private individual. And so that is not available for consideration, and probably can answer a lot of other questions, but let's move on.
All right, great. That's why we have social media, so we can post those, and we're glad we have those questions. Let's move on to the next section, which is section 2. And thank you for your comments. Feel free to continue on with your comments as we're speaking. We'll get to those later. This is the second part of our meeting tonight. We're going to be looking at the services that unhoused Sonoma Valley residents are already getting and what's needed that is not being provided. So we're going to look at examples from around the county of other things that are working to bring those to you. And then we're going to look at services that are being provided locally. So let's go ahead and get started. We're going to hear from Tina. I'd like to hear from Tina first, because we've not heard from you yet. And then Dave Kiff about what is happening, some successful initiatives that are happening around Sonoma County. And right here, we've got a picture of Los Gillicos Village that some of you referred to. Tina.
Yes, as BJ mentioned, this is a picture of Los Gillicos Village shelter. We've said a few things already about Los Gillicos Village. It's been operational since January of 2020. It has served as one of the key entry points into the sheltering and housing system of care for some of the most vulnerable and chronically homeless members of our community. It's been a successful model for other counties throughout the state of California. We've had several individuals come in and tour this facility to replicate it throughout other counties. LG Village has sheltered and served in excess of 200 homeless persons. And of those, we've seen approximately 34% of those individuals move into permanent supportive housing. There have been many improvements made at the site. We've put in sprinkler systems. We've taken a look at what other upgrades were needed to be made. We've put air conditioning systems in these little units, and as well as upgrading the mattresses so that residents could be a bit more comfortable. St. Vincent de Paul is our provider, our operator here. We also use our HEART team, which is our homeless encampment resource team, and I'll get to them in just a moment. They provide wraparound services and supports for the individuals who remain at the site. As Supervisor Gorin mentioned, there are 16 Sonoma Valleyans who are residing at LG Villages currently. Some of the other things that we provide, we have a trailer site. In response to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Department of Health, we stood up a number of non-congregate sites. Some of them are very temporary, and when FEMA funding ends, unfortunately, those sites will be demobilized. But the trailers, we do own those. The state donated those to the county, and we stood those sites up. We have about 30 trailers at two particular spots at the Santa Rosa Fairgrounds, and they house some of our most vulnerable residents. We provide services and supports out there, such as art therapy. We have a space for pets where individuals bring in their service and emotional support animals, case management, benefit assistance, things of that nature are provided to individuals there. And then I just wanted to also mention Project Home Key. I know I don't have a lot of time, but Project Home Key Round 1 was just a really successful initiative. And I know Dave will talk about Project Home Key Round 2, which is coming up, which is something that we'll be taking advantage of and in collaboration with our city partners. But Round 1 provided 2 sites here in Sonoma County for us, as the Sebastopol Inn, which is now called Elderberry Commons, and then also Mickey Zane Place, formerly the Azura in Santa Rosa. And collectively, these 2 sites, which are currently transitional housing and will be converted into permanent supportive housing, provide 75 units of housing to vulnerable individuals. Under the FEMA declaration, we house individuals who are over the age of 65 with at-risk medical conditions, and our provider, DEMA, provide services and supports, medical services and supports, and social services and supports for these individuals housed at the site. So folks have been able to get employment. They have gained permanent supportive housing from these sites. And so they also get wraparound services and supports from our HEART team. And then just to mention a couple of things about our HEART team. I know many individuals want to know about who is HEART. Well, HEART is our Homeless Encampment Access and Resource Team real quickly. This is one of our Access Sonoma interdepartmental multidisciplinary teams or cohorts. This was initiated as a result of the Joe Rodota Trail encampment, which was Sonoma County's largest encampment. This particular team focuses on sheltering Sonoma County's homeless population. So what this cohort does is respond to encampments, but they also provide case management assistance. They were expanded back in March of 2020 to provide coordinated care to individuals who need those wraparound supports and services. So just real quickly, since March 10th of 2020, our HEART team members have made contacts to in excess of 800 individuals, provided 329 service connections. They've outreached to thousands of individuals. They've helped to assist in getting over 600 individuals off the streets, submitted 249 applications for an array of services, which would include medical enrollments to primary care services, applications for general assistance, CalFresh, pharmacy services, supplemental security income, driver's license and ID support, referrals to crisis stabilization services. They assist with substance use disorder services, mental health services, doctor's appointment visits and service connections throughout the county. And so I also wanted to mention that for Sonoma, HEART within the last 10 months have made about 20 to 25 service engagements in your area. And most of those were referred to through SOS. And there have been about 3 encampment engagements. And the most recent was the Staples location. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dave for anything additional. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. And both as Tina and the Supervisor Gorin mentioned, Project Home Key to me is a real game changer in how we approach homelessness in Sonoma County and across the state. This is $1.4 billion coming from ARPA funds, the federal COVID relief funds, as well as state general funds. And Sonoma County already has, our region already has 3 applications in for, and these are conversions typically of hotels into permanent supportive housing, or in some cases, just spaces into interim housing and then permanent supportive housing. So remember, think of housing as a pipeline. Someone coming out of homelessness needs to first kind of enter an interim housing solution, a non-congregate shelter or a shelter. Then they move to, then they get stabilized, kind of figure out what's going on in their lives. And then they go to supportive housing and then to market rate or affordable housing eventually. They may stay in permanent supportive housing for a very long time, maybe forever. But so we're trying to build that front door and add to this, the region's capacity of both non-congregate shelters and permanent supportive housing. Home Key does that. There's a big proposal in Petaluma. There's one in Rohnert Park. There's one in Healdsburg and North County. The county has an opportunity to put forth anywhere between 1 and 3. The board authorized us to do 3 yesterday. So we're excited about that. And I don't want to go over time, so we'll talk about that more if need be.
Okay, thank you so much. It's great to hear what's happening countywide and all the exciting opportunities that we have ahead of us now with the additional funding from the state. Let's look now at what's happening in Sonoma Valley through SOS's services. Kathy, I know Kathy's going to run through these slides quickly. Go ahead and let's go ahead and get started. Kathy?
Okay, can you hear me now?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, for the past 14 years, SOS has been following our mission of feeding the hungry and sheltering the homeless in Sonoma and Sonoma Valley. This is thanks to our experienced professional staff, 133 volunteers who have given us 2,578 hours, and to a board and of 10 individuals who are committed to our mission. This is, again, the number of people that we're serving, but they, in turn, they feed other people and bring other people their meals. So next slide. So this is all clients. This is the age range for all clients. And you can see the distribution. Next slide. This is the other, this isn't the right one. I'm sorry. This isn't our services. This is the wrong slide, Trey. It starts with
Keep going, you'll find it.
Home delivery, starts with home deliveries. Here it is.
Yeah, you'll
So
see
home
services.
deliveries,
Perfect.
here we go.
That's great.
So
We're
home
good.
deliveries, this is a new program. It started on July 1st. We bring food into the Springs. You can see twice a week, about 20 to 22 individuals. And also these people are on the edge of maybe being homeless. And I also want to acknowledge Food for All and Meals on Wheels, who provide meals to people who, again, could fall into being homeless. And they are a key part of our outreach. Next slide. And this is the unbelievable part. In 2019, you can see how many meals we are serving. And by the end of December, we will have served 50,000 meals into our community. This is Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 1 o'clock. Next slide. This is each day who comes in to receive our meals. These are nutritious, healthy meals and prepared by our excellent chefs. Next, shower. That's at the Springs Hall. The showers. This is, again, we provide showers and a monitor at the shower for one at a time to do laundry. Next slide. We partnered with Sonoma Valley Hospital and the Health Center. And since April 7th, we've provided 8 clinics, pop-up clinics for vaccine testing. And the next 3 months, we're going to do boosters and flu shots. And we're really grateful for being a part of their outreach. Next one. This is how many people say they live in cars. We can put 9 people out in front of the Haven. We have again, following the rules of the city, that we have a monitor there from Protective Services from 10 o'clock at night until 6 in the morning, and making sure that everything's safe. Next one. And like we said, we've been able to move 16 people into LG Village and then 2 people into the trailers. We want to continue that and see if we can get more slots. Next one. These are all our services. I think the key piece is that the hotel vouchers, but of course, La Luz comes in once a week, resource person, and helps people refer to whatever their needs are, so we can serve our Spanish-speaking community, which is 43% of the people that we serve total, and also a case manager that is there 3 days a week, helping people to move on to permanent housing or find jobs or just help them in general. It's a good thing. So I just want to thank the community and for funding all of this. And we appreciate the ability to tell you what we've been doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. And now we want to hear from Sandy Potter. Many of you may know her with Fish. And then Annie Falandez with Homeless Action Sonoma. Let's start with Sandy. Sandy, what is Fish doing? And I know that you're working with what we call the people who are on the cusp of homelessness.
Right. I think our greatest contribution to keeping people away from homelessness is our rental program and utilities program, which pays up to 50% or $1,000 of rent for multiple months to keep people out of homelessness. When it comes to homelessness, our services include gasoline. We provide gasoline for many of those people who live in their cars. We have clothing. We have bus tickets. We periodically pick up a hotel room when available. And we also have food, which is special bags of that can easily access flip tops and individual servings so that people can actually access the food that we're giving them. Again, the focus of Fish is to provide safety net services. So our real focus is to keep people out of homelessness, but the reality is homelessness is all around us. So we do try and provide as much support as we can. Also, since the fire of 2017, we've provided fuel for someone who's living in a shack and has a generator there, but sustained and not homeless. So that's Fish in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you so much. And your bunch of volunteers, I know, works really hard to serve our community. Thank you so much, Sandy, for your work that you've been doing for a very long time in the community. Thank you. Annie, tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Homeless Action Sonoma. I know that you're fairly new to the group, so of serving our unhoused population. Tell us a little bit about what you are doing.
Okay, could we go back one slide? Because that's my barbecue.
Yes.
Sure. What we're doing, our founding mission is to end homelessness in the Sonoma City area using a 4-pillar approach. It's educate, integrate, innovate, and then create. We do not want to be in the business of maintaining homelessness. That said, this past year, we have provided basic services for over 30 clients working out of my home. Most importantly, we have worked hard on the basic mission statement goals, to educate and integrate. There is a need to educate both the homeless and the housed members of our community. This increases the visibility of the homeless and breaks down the stereotyping that exists, which prevents integrating. I have heard all homeless are drug addicts, criminals, mentally ill, and yes, out to ruin our real estate values. And on the other side, I've heard all housed are snooty, hold all the power, hate the homeless, want to lock us up, offer no real help, and assume that the homeless are responsible for anything that goes wrong. We have and will continue to hold speaking engagements, news stories, outreach, and any other avenue we can find to engage both communities. HAS believes that without community involvement, we cannot end homelessness. We have 2 programs working to this end that have proven successful. One is befriending. It's modeled on the Mentoring Alliance. We have been holding community barbecues, and that's one of my barbecues for when I held them in my backyard. We've been holding these barbecues on Sunday for the last 2 years. Housed and homeless together prepare and share a meal. With time, friendships are formed and with this trust. Now the homeless have a friend to talk to, help them get the services they need, and work together to be one community. To date, we have housed 6 people. We found jobs for 6 people, driver's license, rehab, and many more services that friends do together. Our second program that I'm really proud of is called Sonoma Professionals Share. This is a program where professionals agree to take pro bono clients for 1 year. We presently have 4 therapists, 3 dentists, 2 oral surgeons, 3 tutors, an auto mechanic, 3 hairdressers, 1 Reiki therapist, and 2 life coaches. They're on board to work with a homeless client. It has made a difference to the clients' lives and creates trust between the communities. With trust, there is hope. And this we have done without staff, without a facility, and without money. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And now we are going to hear from several of our panelists today about what services and support that our unhoused neighbors need, what's missing. So we're going to have 7 people share their perspectives, and I'm going to start with our mayor, Madeline Agramonte. I want to ask you about the needs of unhoused people living in the city of Sonoma. And each one of you gets less than 1 minute. So I'm going to ask just really at top of mind, what's one thing? What are the needs? Oh, Madeline, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I know, sorry.
That's okay. Welcome.
So my goal, of course, is everybody to educate yourself, know about COC, Continuum of Care, CDC, know what those agencies does and where the money comes from. And I think for us, in order to house people, we would need a South County plan. What that means, working with COTS, we have partnered with them before. I'm very excited about that. I've worked with the SOS for many years, support them. And the North County has a plan, we do not. And what else? Measure O, I would love to know how Measure O is going to work with this. The other thing I wanted to let people know is I was homeless as a child. I went to 9 schools before high school. So it's sort of I credit to the public education system. And, but we weren't homeless in cars or in the streets, but we were on people's couches on floors. So that's something that I'm very familiar with. So I understand that. And that's why I'm so committed to get people housed here in Sonoma. Unfortunately, everybody thinks that, you know, they're human beings. We're all human beings. But unfortunately, some have drug, alcohol issues, you know, behavioral issues. I think this has been mentioned throughout the program here. Those are things that have still not been worked with. I think as Senator Scott Wiener, they introduced a bill that passed. They've never done anything with it. If anybody has contact with police, fire, hospital, social services more than 8 times in a year, they are put into a conservatorship. It was unfunded probably, because I think it's a great idea, because there are some people that need that type of assistance. Thank you, Supervisor Gorin. Thank you all. I really enjoyed being on this panel, and I really look forward to us moving forward. And as I said, we need a North County plan. And thank you, Dave Kiff. He gave me information on all the different ways that you get money and where that comes from. And I think that's very valuable. And I think everyone else should check that out themselves. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's go to our school district superintendent, Dr. Palazuelos. Can you give us a perspective about the needs of our families, especially our Latinx families? Can you share that with us?
Absolutely. I hope you guys can hear me. Sound okay?
Yes.
Yeah, I think that in my experience, and you know, one of the things that I bring to Sonoma Valley is I've worked in other counties, and the homelessness issue is not something that is just specific to our county here in Sonoma. And when we start folding in additional factors, including second language, if there's an individual that has specific needs or special needs, all of that gets compounded when there's homelessness. And so as a school system, it becomes very important that we as a system, number one, provide every measure of services possible. You know, prior to the pandemic, it was about making sure that we had clear access to meals. And then if we had families that were able to get some level of interim housing, one of the key pieces of the McKinney-Vento Act was to make sure that the students could continue to attend a school where they've started. And so I can share as a superintendent of a previous district, you know, making sure that we could provide the conveyance for a student to be able to get to the school that they're enrolled in. So as much as possible, we could maintain that stability for them, in as much as we could, right, with respect to the school. But I would say that there are, you know, we all know that the pandemic just brought in additional challenges and concerns. You know, one of the things that I was very, very impressed with that took place, you know, as a result of action by our legislators was around evictions, because we know that one of the things that propelled a lot of our families into homelessness, especially families that were, you know, already struggling economically, was an eviction. An eviction placed them in a challenge of you know, having to go from home to home. You know, and one of the things that we know is that being able to provide that stability at the school level as much as we could provided some level of respite for the family, and also an opportunity for the child to be successful, to be able to achieve their dreams. I know I've only got a little bit of time left, but I think that one of the key pieces is making sure that our staff is working with the families, that they're providing the right advice and support so that we can see, and more importantly, address whatever needs they may have, whether it be school supplies, whether it be access to meals. But sometimes a lot of it is just being able to have someone that they have a relationship with, that they can talk to about some of the things that are of concern for them. And we also have to be very mindful that sometimes with our older students in the high school level, things will happen in the family, abrupt shifts, that they'll begin, you know, using a term, couch surfing, right? Staying at different homes, and it is a form of homelessness as well. And so we have to be very mindful and aware of that as well.
Thank you for that. Very, very thoughtful comments. Thank you so much. Cheryl, from a health perspective, what do people need? Just real quickly, what's the most important thing people need?
There's two things. Number one, I think obviously the theme of this evening has been more mental health services. And this system of things, most of the stuff is billable when it's done within your four walls. It's not so billable when it's done outside of your four walls. So, you know, there are changes to the state system that would encourage having and meeting people where they are and providing services where people are. And I'm looking forward to that day. It's 2023. And so that would be great. And I think the other thing that we need to do is to continue to offer the services that have been provided. So a lot of these systems are very complicated, healthcare, housing, everything. And it's been great that you had, Heart and other groups that were going out and meeting people where they were and helping them navigate the system. The system is just way too complicated. It needs to be streamlined.
Thank you very much, Cheryl. Annie, what are you seeing, especially as winter approaches? One need.
Yeah, there's so many, but I think if I can, in fact, this one's been frustrating me and many of my friends recently, is we need technology support. As the world becomes more and more dependent on technology, the elderly, such as me, and the homeless, we're being left out. How do you schedule an appointment, get test results, or even use a dating service without a computer, cell phone, or an email address? How do you deal with the DMV without consistent access to tech support and the knowledge to use it? I know how discouraged I get on a daily basis trying to navigate for services. Homeless people just give up. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Sandy, from your perspective, what do you think is the greatest need for the people that are on the cusp of homelessness or precariously housed? Number one most important thing.
I'm going to use the notion of emergency, and it's shelter. I think we need shelter, a severe weather shelter to cope with the kinds of rains we had recently. We need a domestic violence shelter for families and children to stay somewhere safely in the valley. And we also need to plan for refugees. Last week, Fish Deal helped a refugee family, and I think there are more coming from around the world. So I would put those emergency pieces together as high need.
Thank you, Sandy. Boy, you're expanding your services quickly into refugee support. Thank you for that. Kathy, we've already heard a lot about the services you provide, but what's the top thing they need? Number one thing that people who are unhoused need, Kathy?
I think they need housing, and there's not a lot of housing stock in Sonoma, and there's no places for people, even if they are making some money, that they can't afford to live here. And the other thing is we really do need to combine with the county on mental health crisis center for substance abuse and mental health issues. Otherwise, what Orlando and I talked about, it's a revolving door. They get picked up, they go to the most people that are in jail are for mental issues. So we need something here in the Valley to deal with our mental health crisis of the homeless.
Thank you, Kathy. And we're going to wrap it up with Dave. Your thoughts. What's the most important thing that unhoused residents need?
More first doors, as has been mentioned, the ability to that first place where you'll kind of stabilize yourself. And then certainly I think the Valley needs more second doors. And those are landlords across Sonoma and the Sonoma Valley who might be interested in participating in our voucher programs. We have vouchers going for the begging. We just need more landlords, and those come with supportive services. So we can help when a tenant is finally placed in an apartment. We can help wrap around those services, but we just need more spaces.
Thank you for that. Let's hear from the community now about what you think needs to happen in Sonoma Valley to serve the unhoused population based on what you feel the needs are and the gaps. And you can go ahead and type in your comments in the Q&A, please. And feel free to email us at d1townhall@sonoma-county.org. Sarah, are you seeing any comments coming in? Any emails, any comments?
We have a few comments that have came in over time here. One from Dr. Mary Flett. I hope I pronounced that correctly. County services are located everywhere but Sonoma Valley, and this is one of the biggest issues. So it sounds like expanding Sonoma services here. Fred Alabach comments, more of a question, if the Springs and Sonoma will use ARPA funds and if those will be directed towards homeless people. Thank you for that. We also have some other questions here. One from Elaine Holtz, who says she's looking to get more information on those who are being served. Her email is listed there for our panelists to email her. Also, when transitioning people, how many of the homeless are looking for employment? So she's looking for some additional data also about children in our schools. We'll add that to our questions. Thank you.
And Sarah, I'm going to make sure that Karina makes a comment to our Spanish-speaking participants tonight as well.
Gracias, BJ. Este es un recordatorio a las personas que están sintonizando y desean escuchar en español. Puede escuchar esta reunión en español haciendo clic en el icono de interpretación en la pantalla a la derecha de su pantalla, en la parte baja. Seleccione clic y seleccione el idioma preferido, en este caso sería Spanish o español. Y si desea hacer un comentario en este momento sobre qué hay que hacer en el Valle de Sonoma para atender a nuestra población sin vivienda, lo puede hacer también escribiendo su comentario en la sección de Q y A o pregunta y respuesta. Gracias.
Thank you.
So we
And we have
comment.
time. Thank you. We have time for about one more comment, and then I want to get to that last section. We can open it up to hear some of your voices. We may run a little late tonight. I apologize for that, but we may keep you just a little bit longer if you can stick around. Go ahead,
Yeah,
Sarah.
we have a comment, actually a question from Jessica asking about job seeking services and what type are offered to unhoused locals. Also a quick one from Kathleen. Kathleen shares some more information about how important tiny home villages are and how they're proven to be better experiences for our unhoused population and how bad some of the experiences have been for homeless folks at congregate shelters. Thank you, Kathleen, for that feedback and that information.
Thank you. I know up at Tina, up at LG Village, Los Gillicos Village, I'm pretty sure there are job seeking services up there, if I'm not mistaken, right, Tina?
Absolutely. There are job seeking services for all homeless individuals through our Sonoma Works program at Human Services. And then through our multidisciplinary teams, we have an individual on the team who assists our homeless clients with any job seeking. And our homeless providers also do this at their sites as well.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Let's move into our last section. And this is about the future of ending homelessness here in Sonoma Valley. And so we're going to be looking at what plans are currently underway to end homelessness in the Valley, what funding's needed, and thoughts on how funding can be obtained to get what we need to get to resolve some of these issues that we've been talking about tonight. So I'm going to start with Mayor Agramonte. And if you will go ahead and give us your thoughts about any planning that's happening, anything about the future that you can see.
Sure. Thank you so much. Well, it's interesting, as I said earlier, we all need to educate ourselves. Thank goodness Dave Kiff and we all have a great relationship with him from Sonoma, and he's sort of schooling us on how these things work. And we think that's really important. And as I mentioned before, for us here in the Valley, we not collectively, but many of us believe here that we need to partner with Petaluma. We've done it before. They have the capacity, they have everything. We have paid for services with them before. And secondly, or maybe even first, could we get help? SOS would like to buy something, rent, we'll do anything for a building. We need a building for services, wraparound services. Compassion is great, but it needs a structure behind it. It needs all of the things that Kathy has spoken about. It's what keeps it moving. It's how you fundraise. She does the icky stuff, marketing, fundraising, medical services. She partners with the school. She's partners with the community center, all of those places. And I think that's all part of our future. But I think our future is partnering with Dave Kiff under their system. They're doing great work. They have the space. We have the space. We might consider changing the Haven into one for protecting abused women. I don't know. That space is meant for that forever. And but that's what I think about the future. We need to know how to do the grants. We need to know how to access them. And thank you, Dave Kiff. You're opening our eyes. Thank you.
Thank you. And let's hear from Dave. Dave, what's the future? What can we expect here in Sonoma Valley?
I think you can expect more housing, more interim housing and more permanent supportive housing. And that's a great thing, as I just talked about.
Okay, thank you for that. Let's find out about some of the plans from both from Annie Falandez with Homeless Action Sonoma, and then Kathy King's going to talk about SOS's plans. Annie.
Hi, we got big plans. We actually have two big plans. First, Homeless Action Sonoma is purchasing property at 18820 Sonoma Highway. Our plans are to put up quick haven houses for the next 2 winters. And in August of 2022, we want to break ground for a transitional facility. The facility will be modeled after Homeward Bound, which we've been working with. It's a 20-year plus successful facility in Marin, and they have an 88% success rate of moving people from the street to be incorporated into the community. Okay, this slide that we're looking at, to orient you, the Highway 12 is on the right side of the slide. The white rectangles are the site of the future permanent facility, and then below that is where we're going to put the quick haven homes, and they will be there for 2 years. The project will include a live site manager's trailer, a dining community tent, a dog run, full navigation center, and the other services that you see listed on the side. Next slide. These are the quick haven houses. They're manufactured in Roanoke Park. The other beautiful thing about Quick Haven is that they hire homeless to build these homes. They're built as kits. They're shipped in containers to the site, and low-skilled people can erect them in about 2 hours. They're really quite extraordinary. And look them up on Google when you get a chance. They're great. Next slide. And then this is the ground floor of the permanent facility. You can see the quick havens are removed and that space becomes parking. Facing Highway 12 at the very front of the facility will be a teaching kitchen / cafe. Next to that will be the administration and client services. Next to that will be single occupancy rooms. Then there's the garden area and additional parking at the very end. Next slide. This is the first floor. Starting at the street again, you see the roof of the kitchen area. That is only going to be 1 story. Over the admin area will be on-site manager's apartment, rooms for women and children, offices for wraparound services. And then over the SRO rooms will be shop and studio space for clients. And then again, the garden. And then in the very back, there'll be 18 apartments. And there'll be 3 floors of apartments. So how does it work? It'll be low barrier entry for a single room. The client will have up to a month to rest, get good food, and get their head cleared. Then they will meet with their friend and their caseworker to make a plan. Everyone is treated individually. Any medical needs will be taken care of, and then we ask, what do you want to do with your life? For example, let's say you want to be a welder. We find you an apprenticeship. Once you have an income, you move to an apartment on campus where you still get all the wraparound services. But now you also are learning to live as a housed person. You pay income-based rent and you have a savings account. You're given career help until such time you are able to move on. It's pretty straightforward. We have found treating people as valuable human beings and giving them an opportunity to express their wishes, it opens their hearts and makes them dare to want to succeed. We are not reinventing the wheel. We just plan to take the Homeward Bound model and with help for our friends in the shelter community, make a Sonoma City area success story. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Now let's move to Kathy with SOS. What are your plans for the future?
Okay, so the plans that we have is to continue serving the 685 individuals that we have been serving, and also continue to provide the 50,000 meals per year. We think those numbers will go up. what we're looking for is a permanent location for our wraparound services with a commercial kitchen, and in order to put safe parking and our laundry facilities at one site. So that's the plan, and we have been looking into that. The next plan is for a winter shelter. If you can move this slide to that. Currently we have been negotiating with committee on the shelter in Petaluma, and they have agreed to be our partner for 120 nights this winter, and 5 beds would be set aside for SOS clients. We will bring them to Petaluma. We also have hotel vouchers that we again have set aside funds for 30 nights in incumbent weather. And like Dan wrote in, we were able to house 10 people over the weekend very quickly, so we know where they are. And we have good relationships with the police and the hospital and the library. We can move people into a dry place. And then we also would like to ask this is the same model as we used last year, multi-level, to move, get 5 extra huts or spaces in the trailers for the winter months only. And you can see what the costs are on a monthly basis. It's not cheap. That's without staffing or security. It's approximately about $50,000. So that's the plan that we've committed to and that we will carry out.
Thank you for that, Kathy. Anything else on that? You done? Okay, so let's go ahead now and open this up to you. And in addition to putting your thoughts in the Q&A, we'll give you an opportunity to speak. And Hannah, are you the one gonna control this?
Yes, should I go ahead and stop the screen share now, BJ?
Yeah, let's go ahead and stop the screen share. And just want to let everybody know that, again, you can still email your comments in at d1townhall@sonoma-county.org. Continue to type in the Q&A, or if you want, you may speak. And Hannah, how would you like them to do this?
At your direction, I can take a look at the attendees, and if there are any raised hands, we can go between Sarah facilitating the written comments and unmuting folks over there.
Great. Let's, Sarah, is there one comment you'd like, 1 or 2 comments, and then we'll open it up?
Let's actually have Karina do a reminder for our Spanish participants.
Thank you.
Gracias una vez más a nuestra comunidad que está escuchando en español. Si desean hacer un comentario, lo pueden hacer en español. Aquí contamos con interpretación. Lo pueden hacer verbalmente utilizando la aplicación de levantar mano. Se les otorgará el permiso para hacerlo verbalmente. O si deseas hacerlo escrito, lo puede hacer en la sección de Q&A o Q&A. Y aquí se le hará interpretación o traducción. Gracias.
Thank you so much. Sarah, any comments you want to look at, and then we can ask some participants to speak up.
It looks like we have a few comments. One from Dr. Mary, who says, we need a vision that addresses short-term and long-term needs, and we need services here in the Valley. Thank you for that comment. Francisco asks if we have any county-wide information on the percentage of those who are homeless and suffer from lack of health care and or receiving disability checks. Thank you, Francisco. We will add that to our question collection. I don't think we have time to answer it right now. And let's see what else we have here. Daniel actually shares a personal experience from being homeless 6 years ago with his family, and how they would spend their days looking for food and places where they could spend the night, and it was exhausting. He says he didn't have energy to look for work or anything that goes with looking for work. When we went into a shelter and knew where I would be spending the night, where my family was, I could use my energy towards looking for work. I also had the stability to go to complete cooking school. He says being homeless is exhausting. Thank you, Daniel, for sharing that personal experience with us.
Thank you. Let's open it up now. Do you see anybody interested in asking a question? Actually, thinking a comment is what we really want to hear. We want your opinions at this point. Hannah, do you see anyone with their hands up?
Yes, BJ, we do have one hand raised. So for this attendee, you should now be able to unmute yourself. And this is for Jonathan.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Hi, this is Jonathan Greenberg. Thank you for having this important, and I applaud the important efforts making. we're making. I'm part of a coalition called the Stop All Government Eviction Coalitions. And, you know, we found that Permit Sonoma is causing through their orders the eviction of over 150 low-income renters every year. But a lot of these trailers we're seeing, a lot of the people we're seeing homeless have been, the last place they've lived is in affordable, safe housing, but because they're trailers or in some cases tiny homes, they're not able to get permits for them. There's no permitting given for those housing, and they're being ordered to be evicted within 30 days. If you look at our, we just heard from a woman today who was in a place where 11 people were ordered evicted within 30 days.
Jonathan, let me just follow up. Are these happening in Sonoma Valley?
This is happening in Sonoma County, and the people are ending up in Sonoma Valley and everywhere in our cities and all over the county. So
Thank you. Thank you.
Supervisor Gorin, we're asking whether she'd like to change the policy of Permit Sonoma to evict low-income people when there's no other reason than because they live in a trailer.
Thank you for that, Jonathan.
And hi, Jonathan. Heard from you clearly yesterday at the board meeting. Just wanted everyone to know that the county has a responsibility to enforce state building codes. But we also have a program of trying to keep people in their homes and trying to help them rectify some of the code violations that might be existing and producing unsafe conditions. Have to ask about sanitary conditions, running water, not only in established homes, but also the little tiny homes. It's an important issue, and I'm not shirking creative solutions. So let's talk about how we can keep people in homes in safe sanitary conditions.
Thank you so much, Supervisor Gorin, and thank you, Jonathan, for that comment. Hannah, do you see any other comments, any other participants interested in speaking?
No other hands raised at this time, but maybe one just popped up, or if you want to switch over to Sarah too, whatever your preference.
Let's have another comment right now from our a participant that wants to speak, and then back to Sarah.
All right, this is for Marion. You should now be able to unmute yourself and make your comment.
Hi, yeah, I had actually sent two comments that weren't addressed, so I'm going to combine the two of them.
Thank you.
I'm a social justice advocate involved with, I'm on the board of Homeward Bound, Saves, as well as an advisory to Homeless Action Sonoma. Does Sonoma Valley or the state of California own any land in Sonoma Valley that's not occupied that could be used for a sanctioned encampment or for development of shelter villages that would have wraparound services and could be managed by a combination of volunteers and professionals? That's question one. Question two, are you not concerned that the initiatives that are being planned and implemented for supportive housing, and this is part of Home Key money, are really only addressing a few hundred of our over 2,000 and growing numbers of unsheltered individuals in Sonoma County? How does Sonoma County and Sonoma Valley envision addressing the rest of the unsheltered community? In my opinion and experience, there's got to be a deep dive into coming up with innovative housing opportunities like the recent build in Highland Park, California, that is a 224 shelter village where the average cost of the shelter is $8,000. And it's very, very similar in its model to the Quick Haven units that Annie is talking about.
Marion, thank you. Let me ask Supervisor Gorin for her insight.
Hi, Marianne. It's great to hear from you. Been working with you at the living room and now Homeless Action Sonoma. Great ideas, and stay tuned because the county is offering and has requested proposals to use $2 million of safe parking money to do exactly what you suggest, looking for innovative solutions for safe parking and pop-up homes in locations that are appropriate to services. And I think that's the key. Where is the land that could be close to services and also wraparound services that will help the residents of any of those shelters access alcohol, drug, mental health services, job services, It's more than just a shelter, it's the services helping them be successful in the community.
Thank you for that. And as I look at my clock, we're about 3 minutes over. I knew we'd just be a little bit over, but I just want to thank everyone for their comments and for thinking about this issue and wanting to learn about this issue. And I'm going to turn this over to Supervisor Gorin for her final comments, and I say goodnight to all of you. Thank you.
There are many, many people to thank for tonight's forum, most of all to the community members, whether you're Spanish speaking or English speaking, for tuning in to our virtual town hall on ending homelessness. It is absolutely inspiring to me how many great organizations like SOS, Homeless Action Sonoma, FISH, Sonoma Ecology Center, all of our law enforcement personnel, and great community members committed to providing solutions to end homelessness. And also need to thank our CDC Interim Executive Director, Dave Kiff, Interim Director of Health Services, Tina Rivera, everyone working together. But thank you also for the great District 1 team and BJ Bischoff and Sarah Steerch for aiding in tonight's facilitation, as well as our incredible translators. It takes a village inside and outside to bring this information and listen to your ideas. Please be safe. Look out for those folks who are housing insecure or homeless tonight. We are thinking of them.